All right, so this is part 2 in our series, the Pursuance Explanation series, in which we go into various aspects of the Pursuance System, which is upcoming. First episode went into the basics of how pursuances work, and you should probably watch that if you're going to watch this one on a series basis. But the short version is that the Pursuance System is an online visualized space in which participants are represented, in this case, by circles, just like it will be in the real thing. And each participant has the same right to create and apply to join pursuances. And beyond that, there's a number of ways pursuance can go. We saw in our last example how a hypothetical pursuance made up of people, with no pre-existing relationships could easily and effectively create a viable entity to do prison reform by helping journalists report on prisons. So in this example, we're going to look at how actual existing institutions like NGOs, nonprofits, anything of that sort, can use this system as an extension of their existing operations, or entirely replace them if they're feeling radical. And there's a number of reasons why this works for these organizations. And we have a couple that have signed up, like Frontline Wellness, which provides healthcare training and conflict resolution in war zones and that sort of thing. They'll be using this for their internal operations. This is more of an example geared towards showing how an NGO can use it to recruit large numbers of people, take advantage of free services, and better coordinate with other NGOs and institutions to see where their shared areas of, I don't like to say synergy, but that's a very important word, where their synergy could be, what information they could be sharing more efficiently, what resources, etc. So we'll jump right into it. And we're going to start with this example of Alpha, as you can see there, depicted as a circle with an A for Alpha, which is her name for some reason. And she's a staffer with a nonprofit called Bikes for Africa. Bikes for Africa is actually a real group that I dealt with years ago when we were first trying to create something along the lines of pursuance back in 2010. But anyway, so in this hypothetical deal, Alpha, if that is her real name, already has full-time responsibilities with this nonprofit, which is small, has few resources, but it gets a lot of work done. And like personnel with a lot of institutions, might be wary of jumping into something that could cause complications, could take a lot of time and resources just to run or experiment with. Luckily, the pursuance system has been geared to sort of minimize those risks. And to maximize the potential of online collaboration. So, being a busy girl, Alpha, who is looking forward to using pursuance, has created 2 people under her. She's created 2 positions running off her pursuance. And you know what? I'm going to draw Alpha. Alpha's pursuance, which in all of our examples and in the actual software is represented by a Q. And as we've said, is sort of the constitution / DNA of the pursuance. Having created this pursuance, Alpha is in total control of it at this point. And to the extent she wants to delegate it, there's a number of ways that can go, but that's something we cover in other episodes. So in this case, Alpha is creating 2 positions for Bikes for Africa pursuance version. One of those positions, which will describe themselves in a moment, are filled by Beta, and one is filled by Cato, which is not actually the Greek alphabet letter for C, but I don't know what that is. I guess they don't have C's, fucking Greeks. Anyway, so she created two positions there and filled them. Beta is tasked with creating a network of volunteers to arrange for, I'm going to point to Beta with my point stick that I made out of an antenna. Beta is tasked with creating a network of volunteers whose job will be to arrange for bike drives in various cities where they live. Now, Beta, having contemplated this mission, and having been, in this case, sort of been given free rein to handle it however Beta shall, decides that it should be divided up into 2 tasks. One of those tasks will be handled by Delta, who Beta has recruited via one of the many ways in which pursuance can find and recruit prospective participants. We have, obviously, keyword search, etc. Or one can visually, in many cases, see what a pursuance does within the system. To the extent that a pursuance, in most cases they will, make their operations and structure visible to outsiders. But at any rate, in this case, Delta has probably found the nonprofit by searching, charities, third world, happened to come across this, found the job description that this line represented, applied, and was brought on by Beta. Now, Beta is brought on Delta, and I'm assuming Epsilon, because his name starts with an E, coincidentally, and has divided, like we said, this task into two basic areas. One of them, Epsilon, is going to find and oversee individuals capable of managing the bike drives themselves. And Cato, where's Cato? The fuck happened to Cato? Okay. D here. Where's D? What does D do? Okay, we'll come back to D. I've got to find out my notes. But at any rate, it's easier than I make it seem. Epsilon, like we said, find and oversee individuals capable of managing the bike drives themselves. Later on, Epsilon may recruit other people that he'll oversee. He may delegate them, each of them, the ability to bring on people under them, perhaps to hold additional bike drives in smaller cities across the region, however he wants to handle it. Delta is brought on to arrange shipments after each bike is completed. So Epsilon, over time, will bring on people to handle cities like, Austin or wherever people give away bikes. Like I said, Austin mostly, and other cities. Delta, meanwhile, handling the shipping after the bikes are collected. So Alpha has, simply by creating these two positions and filling it with someone responsible, has allowed this sort of flowering to take place, whereby through the filtration system that we talked about last time, any ideas that come up are going to get an airing. The thing is, she doesn't have to oversee every single little thing, doesn't have to micromanage. She's allowing the proceduralism of the system to kind of do its work. And that's something that in many cases is going to be viable. In some cases, obviously, nonprofits and NGOs are going to have a reasonable concern over, well, we bring somebody on, they're not part of our organization as such, they don't come into this building, they didn't file out paperwork, they're acting in our name, they might do something to embarrass us. That's absolutely true. So in many cases, just like real life with a brick and mortar institution, there are going to be some areas of activity in which you're not going to want to necessarily let somebody come on and then delegate, however they like and bring on whoever they like. But again, in cases where you're doing bike drives, obviously you have someone responsible in place to make sure that the bikes are not being stolen or whatever. Just like with any real organization, it's going to work out pretty well. That's our experience again with sort of collaborative, haphazard online organizing and that kind of thing. I'm sure it's the experience of most NGO people. Now, so the bottom line is that these things, these growths, they have no more risk for the most part than you're going to have with large numbers of people working in your building. It's the same risks, but more potential here. And there's ways to minimize with those risks in that case. But in this case, we're just collecting bikes, not a huge deal. And that's all wonderful. Now, so Alpha also, being a very loyal Bikes for Africa member, wants to raise additional funds to cover the expenses that are come up when they collect these bikes and ship them. And so she's recruited Cato to handle that fundraising. Now, Cato, in this case, can easily get such things disseminated via Twitter, friendly bloggers, and other means. Cato has some experience in this, perhaps. But he wants the actual message to be as compelling as possible. So he does a search of the Pursuance universe, which is another aspect of all this, and finds what we call a crew. A crew is a sort of specialized pursuance that does sort of one-off limited work on a particular area for different pursuances at different times. So for instance, something like this, which does not have a graphic designer, Bike for Africa. Neither the pursuance nor the actual organization of which the pursuance is an extension has a graphic designer on staff, blah, blah. They could hire one, or they can do like many people in the online or activist community did, and go to somebody who specializes in providing free services to nonprofits, which works very well. Pursuance makes it work better. It's just a little bit more systematized. Again, obviously, as opposed to the IRC networks on which some of these successful groups worked years ago, and as opposed to just having a bunch of people in a crowd at Occupy Wall Street and hoping people figure out what everyone is capable of doing and gets it done. This does make it a little bit easier to figure out where those skills are, who has them, and do they have a reputation of using them responsibly. All things which are handled in different other facets of this system. But at any rate, he finds somebody. He finds a pursuance that specializes in putting together online appeals for fundraising. And we will draw that now. It'll be fun. Drawing the crew, Pursuance, which is, again, its own independent pursuance. It was started at some point, presumably by A here. But as you'll notice, unlike this pursuance, and unlike the pursuance we saw in the last example in episode 1, this is a democratic pursuance. It's not just one person that created the pursuance and then remains connected to it, as here, who is ultimately responsible for everything and ultimately gets to delegate all this authority. But instead, this person has created a pursuance and brought on several people who have the same or similar control over the pursuance's growth as A does, a democratic pursuance. That can be handled in a number of different ways. This pursuance may operate by majority votes, where they only accept gigs or make any number of other decisions with a majority of their 4 members, or they may have it where it's only have to be unanimous. That's up to them, and there's a number of ways to settle that within the system. But it does kind of cut down on the problems that do arise quite frequently when you have large numbers of people suddenly put together in an online space, or any space really, with no pre-existing relationships. It does allow for a way, quick, easy way to set up, who is in charge and why. Again, since everyone can create a pursuance, anyone can create one like this, creating graphic design appeals for NGOs. And instead of having other people attached, have them still delegated under A, just like this one over here. But there's certain people who aren't going to want to join a pursuance like that. They're going to want to have full control. So this solves all that by allowing anyone to create whatever pursuance they like. And if someone wants to create a similar pursuance that has similar functions, but differently, more democratically perhaps, or whatever, they can go create their own as well. And whoever wants to be part of whichever one can apply for that particular one. So it cuts down on a lot of the debates and disputes that do come up, again, in less organized online movements, while still taking advantage of the large amount of energy and talent out there, which is one of the ultimate goals of all this. So this thing exists as a crew, providing these services to various worthy pursuances, and in this case has agreed to help Bikes for Africa create an online appeal for fundraising, and so a informal connection is created. There are 2 kinds of connections besides the very basic pursuance connection between participants. There is a formal connection between pursuances, and then there's an informal connection between 2 members of 2 different pursuances. Now, depending on the settings of a pursuance, a participant in a pursuance may be allowed to create whatever informal connections he would like with members of other pursuances, or he may require permission from someone else, or may be subject to a majority vote among every single member of the pursuance. There's a number of settings. The default, I believe, will be that any pursuance member can create an informal connection. These generally are just for information purposes. They're for transferring information, keeping each other abreast. Obviously, if there's a group like Bikes for Africa and there's another group that provides birth control information to third world countries, they might seek each other out here within the pursuance system and kind of see what the needs and assets of each other are, and try to save money by having the bike deliveries, somehow facilitated by existing operations by this other group. So you're going to have a lot of pursuances, both institutionals, NGO type things like here, or more conglomerations of individuals like with most pursuances, building connections, both informal and formal, to collaborate as they should. Now, there's also another kind of connection between pursuances, the formal connection, which I would do in another color. Fortunately, I only have red and green, which kind of looks tacky. But a formal pursuance connection is one that is, because it's formal, is created between the two pursuances based on who runs each pursuance. So in this case, if the formal connection had been made, perhaps all four of them would have had to agree or vote majority to develop this connection. In this case, since Alpha is in charge here and these people have agreed to have Alpha in charge, Alpha could have just made the call and said, yes, we want to have a formal connection with you. And this could be a long-term connection where they plan on, working with each other on a number of levels over time, or it could be just a short temporary thing while one provides a service and whatever. But anyway, those are the two connections. But in this case, it's just an informal connection between C. C's job, again, is to do the fundraising. So C is going to be dealing with this group and give them, the information that the Bikes for Africa wants to be put out and kind of work with them to develop something. And they'll put their skills to use here, creating this online fundraising appeal. And then when that's done, presumably, this crew will go on its merry way. Off to save more NGOs. Off to save them from the costs of hiring graphic designers. Take that, feelings, graphic designers. So when the appeal is finished, the end result is sent back to Cato through the thing I just erased, thereby complicating everything. And Cato sends it to Alpha for review, and Alpha sends it to whoever at Bikes for Africa gets to make all these wonderful decisions, or whatever. And then they do it, and then they dissolve their connection. So that's one way in which NGOs can use this. A couple things bear noting. The pursuance universe may be used, I'm reading from notes now, as I wrote a while back. The pursuance universe may be used to coordinate collaboration between two or more institutions. The array of tools and options described elsewhere will provide for a scale and efficiency of cooperation that goes well beyond what can now be achieved via email and telephone conferences. Indeed, the system itself, this pursuance system rather, actually encourages such collaboration by putting operational outgrowths of these institutions together into a single ecosystem, by which I mean here's all these lovely pursuances, which are institutions, some of which, nonprofits, some of which are, again, conglomerations of individuals who have come together to do something or another, as we saw in the last example. And they're all kind of there in this same universe, able to see each other's operations to the extent that they're public, and thus it reduces the threshold that exists for two groups to work together. In real life, one organization may not know the other organization exists. It may not be evident without a great deal of conversation if there's any possibility of working together. And beyond that, there are barriers that obviously make it harder to find out, what group is out there in the world that we could most efficiently work with to do the kind of important work that we're doing. And this does with the visualization and with the search database, and by having a huge population of people with similar values who are interested in activism, this does make that easier, facilitates that. So the last point I should make is that along with its function as a means of recruiting new volunteers for particular tasks, the Pursuance System also allows institutions to turn its passive contacts of supporters and donors into an active constituency, willing and able to participate in mass campaigns and ongoing activist work. Signing online petitions, sharing links, and donating a few dollars are the most common means of helping nonprofits right now, not just because such things are easily and quickly done, but also because such things are generally all that's on offer. The self-organized online campaigns of the last 10 years, including those in opposition to internet regulations, like SOPA, for instance, prove that there's a large body of citizens out there that will pursue meaningful activist work if the opportunity is provided to do so. The Pursuance System, properly used, is the means of providing those opportunities on an ongoing basis. There is a quote from a book I have yet to read, but which I've heard quite a bit about by the fellow who created the Pirate Party. It's from one of those European countries, I forget which one. It's one of the cold ones. Who says to a fellow who runs an organization, your problems aren't about the people that you employ. The problem here is the large number of people who want to work for you, but you don't let them. And as I've noted in the previous video, there are a large number of people out there who are capable, who may or may not have degrees or any kind of official signs of competence and ability, but who are out there who would love to do things like join the Peace Corps, but maybe they haven't been to college, or would love to work with an NGO or do something to combat the political climate, but don't want to jump through hoops, don't want to go door to door with a petition or raise money or do any number of the things that they have to do in order to get to a position where they can really put their full skills to work and get their ideas implemented. Pursuance system, those people can come on here, come up with a good idea, create a pursuance, put out their idea, say this is what we're going to do, this is how we're going to do it. If you'd like to join me, come do so. And have a large number of people out there who are on the same page, who can work with this person, experiment with their ideas, and if they're adopted, get them widely used and implemented, wherever it needs to be done. And that's important. That's one of the many facets that the internet allows for and has allowed for a while. But the time and energy that's gone into creating shit like Facebook and other time-wasting socializing things, for the most part, no one has designed a universe, a single system, a universal system that's going to be enough for everyone. Everyone has their independence. Everyone is secure in encryption, etc., and is able to create entities as they wish to create them and associate as they want to associate under circumstances of their choosing that are clear to everyone. And that's what this is. This is intended to allow that to happen, to create the tool set that every individual needs and every organization needs if they're really going to take advantage of what's necessary to take advantage of as things deteriorate. So it'll allow people to step up their game as institutions, as individuals, as citizens. There are a number of other aspects to this that impact NGOs, but a lot of them are kind of universal to the system, so we'll deal with them in another episode. I should end by noting that everything I just said is amazing, and you should spread the word about Pursuance to other activists, to academics, grad students, volunteers that you know, friends, anyone competent who wants to fight to secure and expand free, open, and just societies. Very well. Thank you for watching my dry erase board. Pursuanceproject.org. Yes, I want to end the live video. Thank you.